Okay, now can you hear me?
Oh, absolutely.
We blew a breaker. We blew, we blew a breaker. Wi-Fi went, everything went. Hi.
That's always the hard part. It's like, oh my gosh, what if my internet goes out, and what happens when the phone rings? And it's like, the phone rings, the internet goes out. Yeah.
We make it work one way or another. So here we are.
Well, so here we are living mindfully, right?
That's right. That's right. Not freaking out. We'll fix it.
And I've been thinking so much about this since we spoke about these kids going into these environments, and that can be less than uh,
I'm able to help, you know,
Yes.
it's fun.
Great. Well, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists and give everybody an idea of what's going to happen here. So the chat room is open for those of you who want to post comments or questions, and we can get you at the appropriate points as we move along. During the rest of the time, please have your audio muted or your microphone muted. And it works best if you have iPhone earbuds. That's what I was trying to think of. Earbuds, headphones, because Jody is going to do a little demo here for us in a little bit. So let me first begin by introducing our panelists. We have Elena Bosch, more than 10 years of, oops, I just realized I covered my camera. I can't do that. Elena is an accredited public relations professional with more than 10 years of experience in PR and integrated marketing. She's been on all sides of the table, camera, stage, or set, and respects all professionals from the intern, the C-suite, the freelancer, the brand manager. She's worked with everybody. She is the PR and communications manager for Think Together, a nonprofit that partners with schools throughout Southern California to change the odds for kids, and not just Southern California, but throughout California, to change the odds for kids. April Van Ligten is with us. She's got more than 10 years of experience in the field of education. She's a restorative justice specialist, serving both at a middle school and a high school. She's got over 12 years of experience in the field of education, ranging from advocacy, teaching, working in nonprofits, to building skills as a restorative justice practitioner, both inside and outside the school environment. So we're really happy to have April with us today. And then also on our panel is Jody Tyson. Jody is a sound alchemist. She is an OC native who has traveled the world and invested years in the mastery of the practices of yoga, meditation, and sound healing. Jody teaches yoga and trains yoga teachers at several area studios. She regularly offers sound meditation and labyrinth practice at the Fish Interfaith Center at Chapman University. Her work as a sound alchemist involves demonstrating the influence of sound in creating a calm, mindful environment. It can help us all learn to live graciously, mindfully, and bravely from the heart, no matter what circumstances. And you'll get to hear more about that in a little bit. What we're going to do, I'll give you the brief outline of what we're going to do today. April is going to open the session up here for us in a couple of minutes. Then we will talk about basic concepts of mindfulness and mindlessness. What do they mean? So if you're here going, mindfulness, it sounds interesting, but I'm not exactly sure what that is, hang on, you're going to find out. We're going to talk about how mindfulness and mindlessness show up in the communications workplace. Jody is going to do some fascinating things with those instruments that she has behind her there. We're going to talk about what variables influence our personal level of mindfulness, as well as what mindful workplaces look like and why they are especially important in the communications professions. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. And then at the end, April is going to close the circle. She's going to lead us in a calm and mindful ending to the session. So it's going to be a fun time here today. And I thank you for joining us. Again, if you can have headphones, it will work best, especially for the wonderful sounds you're going to hear in a little bit. And if everybody would stay muted during this, please do. Feel free to put comments in chat, and we will respond to those at the appropriate time. I see some of my students from the 466 class. Hi, welcome. I see colleagues from the department and the college. Yay. Glad to have you all here today. April, why don't you start by opening us up?
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. So, hey, everybody. Again, my name is April. My pronouns are she, her, hers. As was mentioned, I'm a restorative justice specialist. And so, a really big restorative practice, right, is engaging in circle, participating in circle. And so, we kind of wanted to give you a taste of that experience by experiencing an opening of what we would typically do in a circle. We start off with an opening, we then go into a check in. And then we close the circle at the very end of our time together with a checkout and then a closing. So we'll be doing those elements of circle today. So to open us up, we are going to do a grounding exercise. So we're incorporating mindfulness into circle practice here today, okay? And so I invite you to go ahead and turn your cameras off if you feel comfortable doing so right now. So just kind of just be in your body and just be present. So if you want to turn your cameras off, you can feel free to do so. If you want to close your eyes, I invite you to do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So again, this is a grounding exercise, and it's a technique that helps us reorient ourselves to the here and the now, right? To bring us into the present. It's a useful technique when we're feeling a bit overwhelmed maybe, or just needing to find our center, right? To recenter ourselves. And so I invite you to engage in a practice like this throughout the day if you're feeling like you need to recenter and to come back to yourself. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to just follow along with me. I'm going to lead us through a few different exercises. And yeah, just lean into it. And so the first one, okay? So again, just sit comfortably in your seat. Again, invite you to just sit comfortably. If you're sitting in a chair, if you're sitting on the couch or on the floor, just get into a comfortable position. What I'm going to first ask you to do is describe 5 things that you see in the room that you are in. Describe them to yourself. Say these to yourself. Describe the shape, the color, maybe the texture. Go ahead and look around and describe those 5 things. Awesome. Now for the remainder of this exercise, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and close your eyes because we're going to start going into the rest of your senses, if you feel comfortable doing so. So for this next round, I'm going to ask you to name 4 things that you can feel. 4 things that you can feel. So maybe that's your feet on the floor. Maybe that's the air coming in and out of your nose as you breathe. Maybe that's your hands rested on your lap. Pay attention and describe 4 things that you can feel. All right, thank you. Now I'm going to ask us to name 3 things that you can hear right now. Tune in to 3 things that you can hear right now. So maybe that's the traffic coming from outside your window. I can definitely hear some of that right now. Maybe it's like the gentle hum of your computer or a fan nearby. Go ahead and tune into those 3 things that you can hear. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask you to name 2 things that you can smell right now. What are 2 smells that you can smell right now? And if there aren't any smells in your space, if you're not smelling a variety of things, I want you to go ahead and channel 2 smells that you really like. two smells that you really enjoy. Maybe that's the smell of fresh laundry coming out of the dryer, the smell of a home cooked meal. Go ahead and channel and name those two smells. Really smell them. Thank you. And lastly, I want you to go ahead and name one good thing about yourself. What's one good thing about the person that you are, the person that's coming to this space with us today? Go ahead and bring that part of you front and center and honor that part of you. What I'm going to ask us to do is we're going to go ahead and take 2 deep breaths in and out. So go ahead and take a deep breath in, deep breath out, a deep breath in, and a deep breath out. And thank you so much for taking the time to be present with us today and to come into this space. And when you're ready, I invite you to go ahead and open your eyes and turn on your camera if you feel comfortable doing so, and rejoin us back in this space together. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And just again, getting present. So appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, so now that we are grounded, right? And we're grounded in our bodies and in this space, I'm gonna ask us quickly to do a check-in. I'm gonna ask you to throw this in the chat if you can. Your check-in is, what is on your mind or what is on your heart today? What is on your mind or what is on your heart today? So here's the questions coming through in the chat. What is on your mind or what is on your heart? Go ahead and throw that in the chat whenever you're ready. You can answer one, you can answer both, whatever your preference is. And I'll read them as they come through. Yeah, we've got stressed about my upcoming internship. Yeah, definitely. I want to share these important ideas with others who need them. We've got stress, feeling very stressed, final papers and assignments, being authentic always, graduation anxiety. Graduation is in my mind and heart. Yeah, it's coming up so soon. Congrats. Deadlines, finals and upcoming projects, finals on my mind already. Thinking about upcoming assignments, money issues, finals and graduation. I'm doing some family healing at the moment. Awesome, beautiful. Stress about upcoming projects. All right, there's so many more coming through. So I invite you, right, to go ahead. Check-ins are really important as a restorative practice because it's an opportunity for you to check in with yourself to see, how am I doing right now, right? Because so much of our day, we just kind of go through the motions, right? We go through our routine. And so a check-in really forces us to pause and say, hey, how am I doing right now? How am I showing up in this space? And it's also a really great way for us to check in with our community to find out, how are other folks doing? Where are they at, right? What are they currently navigating? So I invite you to do that, to go ahead and continue reading where people are at today, offering support, affirmation, whatever is coming up for you, okay? So thank you so much for doing that, and I'll go ahead and pass it back to Doug. Thank you so much.
Thank you, April. We appreciate that. That's wonderful to get us started that way. And you'll be back with more in a few minutes. So let me ask you, Jody, now. April just got us into a mindfulness frame. What does that mean?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm thinking about this mindfulness, and here we all are sitting together in front of our computers and so forth. And as we read all this, what I'm seeing is so many people, their minds are over here, which is fine, stressed over what's coming next, stressed about graduation, all the things that are our daily life. And when I see that, we really see that there's a sense in this community, especially among the students, and trust me, it was quite some time ago that I was a student in college, but I feel I'm always a student of life, that how that stress can really sabotage or undermine our state of being. So my suggestion or my thought around this is, what if you were just for this moment to say, I'm going to stop everything and really be present and listen. And it's hard to do because our minds are so swept up in doing other things at some other time. And it's really, mindfulness is gathering it all back up and say, wait a minute, I'm going to be present right here, right now. There's nothing I can do about that paper, unless, of course, you have your little emoji or your little avatar up and you're actually typing away on your term paper. That could be happening. I don't know. And it's okay if it is, there's no judgment here. But it's really, when we set that intention to really be present. So to me, mindfulness is about a state of mind, about really being present. And it can even be present with your anxious self. That's okay too. We talk about those shadows when we kind of dig into those areas. So mindfulness isn't all, peaches and cream and, roses and candy. It really does deal with some of those other issues that we're dealing with so that we can bring them to the surface and mindfully look at them from a perspective of wholeness versus a fragmented view, because everything is so scattershot. And that's the society we live in. So it's very supported in that way, but that doesn't make it be healthy for us. So for me, mindfulness is bringing us back to a space where we can say, okay, let me just take a moment. And as April led us, to really take in a moment, what am I sensing? What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? Because very often we just go about our life without any recognition of what that is and how that's even affecting us. And oftentimes, dare I say, during this pandemic, infecting us. And really, so to me, and I hope I answered that question, this is really, mindfulness is about mind training, bringing us back to the present moment instead of us living somewhere outside where there's nothing that can be done. The only thing that can be done is right here, right now. Yet we trick ourselves into thinking, well, when this, then, and we've lost every bit of our moment, the precious time that we have right now. So mindfulness brings us back to now.
Oh, that's a great lead in for my question now to Elena. That's a great lead in, and we did not rehearse this. So Elena, when people are in the media professions, there's this mindset of go, 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 now, 24/7, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. How do we stay mindful in a workplace that has so many things telling us not to be?
I feel like I can't even answer that question after following Jody and April. Can I just say, like, that was such a great opening, April, and Jody, you really did a great job defining mindfulness and the importance of being present. So mindfulness in the workplace is something that it's not linear. You will ebb and flow, just like Jody was saying. You may have your camera off and have to multitask. In the workplace, and especially in a communications field position, I think mindfulness really shows up when you are able to work collaboratively with others in a way that you are able to set healthy boundaries and communicate effectively, and know when, what to say, when to say it. There are times when you're going to feel like you're juggling a lot of balls in the air, and there are times when you're going to need to stop and really be present for the moment. I can actually give you an example today. I had an opportunity to oversee an interview with one of our spokespeople and a member of the media. In that moment, you have to be 100% present, but you can't expect others to respect your need to be mindful or your need to set boundaries if you're not communicating, hey, I'm going to be out for half the day. I have to be 100% present for my spokesperson who's going to be working with the media. I need to be able to be there to support my colleague and be there 110% if that person has questions, if that person needs help, if that person needs assistance in any way. And so then you have to put your, that person first, you're kind of second, and you're being very clear. You're not going to be third forever, but in this moment, I have to put this person first and I have to set this healthy boundary. So that's one way, in a really tactical way. I think in a really meaningful and strategic way, however, I would recommend a lot of reflection. I think sometimes mindfulness gets conflated and convoluted in, oh, it's yoga and it's meditation, and it can be, it absolutely can be, and certainly those things will help sharpen that tool, but really it is about being present in the moment, so that you can take constructive criticism without snapping, so that you can give constructive criticism without hurting someone's feelings, and really being and leading empathetically with the other person in mind. That's mindfulness in the workplace, in communications.
Very well said. Very well said. Yeah, I think a lot of it involves not getting stuck in the autopilot, if you will, of this is how it has to be. This is how it has to go on the treadmill. We've got to do it now. We've got to do it now. When you get stuck in autopilot and on the treadmill, things go downhill in a hurry. So,
Yeah. I would agree. I think that in any industry, it can be really easy to feel, your confidence beaming as soon as you get comfortable and you're doing tasks over and over and over again. And you've sent that email weekly on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. for the last 6 months. But actually, that's a slippery slope to complacency and then mindlessness. And even just today, 12th email send distribution, I was like, stop. Let's have somebody with a fresh pair of eyes look at this. Because I recognize my own autopilot writing the key messages that I've written 200 times and could say it backwards by now. And sure enough, somebody did catch 2 or 3 typos.
Yeah, that's right.
Can
That's right.
can I piggyback on that a little bit? Because
Yes.
what you're saying is it's so true, and that part of that mindfulness, like you said, complacency, the slippery slope. We got it wired, so it hardwires, right? We know neurons that fire together, wire together in our brain, and these things start to happen, and we start creating a rigid sense of self. And as we do that, and then we have these expectations that may be realistic or not, when we fall short of those, it comes out and manifests in ways that we don't even know because we're caught so far off guard. So another part of the whole mindfulness tool is, who am I? Mindfulness is the inward look at okay, and it's also understanding, I can't read your mind. I don't know what you're thinking. And so when you hear comments like, well, when you said that, that made me mad. And I was talking to Doug about this earlier. It's like, no, I didn't make you mad. That's your choice based on this. And once again, mindfulness allows us to see we have choices in everything we do. We're looking at ourselves. We're looking at, why do I respond or behave this way when certain stimuli happen? I can now look and take some time to say, hey, why do I feel that way? What is that? Is that just an old pattern that's reemerging again? I'm just, the reflex is happening. And those are the things where we can start to grow. And we start to grow as a professional. We start to grow as a better human being towards one another. We have empathy because we know, oh, that hurts. That hurt me too. These people can be hurt too. They understand suffering. We start to go into those deeper avenues of attachment and those types of things. And I think, what you said, Ilana, about in the workplace, spot on. Many moons ago, I was also a public relations professional. I actually had an advertising agency for about 10 years. And, mindfulness is it's the most of, as communicators, we need to understand the communication process and not get caught up in it, but we need to apply it in ourself first as the experiment. So that was my little piggyback.
That's right. It all starts and ends with me, and it's difficult to remember that sometimes. So, and some of the ideas that you just talked about, April is going to get back to those in a little while when she talks about restorative justice, because those concepts are so important for our communities as well. So, but right now, Jody, I have a quote from you. I think it's from you. Well, I don't know. If it sounds good, it's from you. Sound healing blends modern science with ancient wisdom to benefit a range of conditions. Practices like overtone chanting, mantra, gongs, drumming, prayers, and crystal bowls have been used for thousands of years, and today's science is starting to understand how and why it benefits our health. That's your lead in, Jody. Take it away.
Okay, well, as we know, we can use sound as a therapeutic form. And what's interesting is sound is really, it's not a thing. All it is it creates a movement, and we feel that as movements of atoms in our ears and our sound, we, so on and so forth, we hear. But sound in this therapeutic and this type of environment and how I work is often live. So you're in a room with me, or you're in a bigger room with lots of people. And not only are you hearing the sound, but you're feeling that vibration. And what I like to do is work with sound because it's very conducive to a deep inner listening. I use it as a container. So when we were breathing, when April began with breathing, really making sure people understand breathing to the depths of our belly, not way up here, because that's part of that flight or fight, which so many of us, especially when we're in the stress condition that so many participants today are mentioning, making sure that breath is really deep in that belly. Not only does it work in that deep listening and feeling on our body, it helps us to start to establish a deeper sense of concentration. So it really becomes a tool for mind training, to look, what's going on? Why is this thought? When this sound happens, I felt this, I saw colors. What does it mean? This is a typical thing that people will experience in any typical session. And it's just kind of a gateway to, oh, good, you've noticed. You see that. You're starting to see things that are happening within you. Once again, mindfulness, the inward journey inside, to take a look so that we can kind of see how we're interacting, not only with ourselves, but then take that out. How's that manifesting to the outside world? So this really puts the onus squarely on us, and it helps us to understand who we are. And we can go really deep in mindfulness as a spiritual practice, but I'll kind of keep it secular here. The one thing I will say is that the more we understand about ourselves, the more we're going to be able to understand the other. We're going to be able to create that compassion, because we find that compassion for ourselves in terms of when we do take those silly little missteps. The other day, something was going on in the house, and I thought, oh, I'll be really nice. I won't say anything. I'll just, complete the task, only to find the task was open and things still needed to be done. I thought, well, once again, the old expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And yet with the mindful practice, it's like, well, that's okay. That's okay. Maybe I needed to look a little deeper and do a little further investigation. So instead of like, oh gosh, I did poorly. Oh, I can't believe I did that. It's like, oh, okay. All right. That's okay. Heart is open. So really, this is a whole idea of coming in through mind of heart. And so sound meditation for me, and when I practice it and when I share it with others, it's really about how do we enter into the deep sanctity of our own heart, that heart space that opens up for compassion for ourselves, which in turn spreads out to the world. It's a vibration. So we're really talking about vibrational frequencies. And I don't know if this is the time you want me to kind of introduce this stuff. Okay, I'm getting the head nod. What I brought today, or what I have today, because of our Zoom, I want to make sure we can get the best quality through. So I chose to stay mainly in crystals, but you'll hear some metals and so forth. And not to get too geeky here, but sound, especially when we're dealing with natural sound, these are all going to create natural acoustic sounds. It's not digitally produced. Nothing here is being digitally produced except for you're receiving it via a digital medium. Can't get around that on Zoom. The point is when that everything has a frequency, a primary frequency, and from that, we have a natural harmonic overtone series that occurs with that. And these are things that we see, these waves that are created. And when I work in sound, often I'm working to create an environment that actually is creating particular sonic waves that entrain your brain. So entrainment is where we have something oscillating at one speed, and pretty soon they come back into sync and they oscillate together. So a lot of what I do is work into the theta and alpha range of sonic, and it's very subliminal. It's very below the radar. You probably won't notice it, but those are some of the techniques that I use, as well as using various intervals and so forth that actually elicit. We know this because science is already proving it. They're showing it. It elicits particular responses in the body. So some of this stuff, and depending on what I'm working with, we might go into some really dark spaces, but that's okay because the sonic environment is used as a container, if you will, always keeping everyone, you're safe, you're here, you're in your room or wherever you are, getting yourself into a place where you know you're okay, and then allowing these frequencies to kind of work through you to see what comes up. So we employ the mindfulness aspect here. What are the thoughts? What am I feeling? What am I noticing that's going on? So once again, I have some crystals. So these are really, their harmonic overtones are very subtle, almost negligible. And then a bunch of metals back there that we'll put out there, and one wind instrument today, and kind of keeping it real simple today. Does that sound reasonable, Doug? Okay.
That sounds reasonable. Go for it.
Okay, so go for it. Okay, I'm moving in. So what I'd like to invite you to do, is I'd love for you to just go ahead and find a really comfortable place. You can lie down, just take a moment. You can turn your camera off if you're more comfortable, especially if you're typing on that term paper. And we'll get started. So just for this moment, what I'd like you to do is just relax and close your eyes. I'd like you to take that very deep breath, and you can place your hands on your navel. And as you exhale, I want you to squeeze your navel towards your belly. And when that next inhalation occurs, I want you to imagine you're pushing your belly upwards, okay? That's just kind of how we start to get that diaphragm to start to engage, so it draws down, creating that expansion of the belly when we bring the breath in, filling up the whole cavity, and then releasing that breath, feeling that belly gently drop down as that muscle releases and pushes upwards, expelling the air. All righty? So we're just going to take a moment here to just listen in. just being exactly where you are. And taking that deep breath in. And see if you just let your body just drift into the earth. Just feel how you're supported in this lifetime, in this body, right now. Bring yourself to that breath, that gateway to inspiration. And take that breath in so deeply. Let that belly expand and fill your body with that life-giving breath. And hold it just for a moment and imagine, visualize it moving through your whole body, your fingers, your toes, your top of your head. And then just let that breath go. Just feeling maybe with a sigh, maybe an audible sigh for you today. And I ask you maybe one more time, really deep breath in and really fill your body. Imagine it going all the way through your legs, out through your hands, up through your crown. And when you let that breath, open your mouth and just go, ah, ah. So that's another way that I work with people in sound, is your sound. And that's something I can certainly offer you today, because we don't always get to hang out like this together. But for you, use your own voice as an anchor point. Things like, ah. Think about when you see something wonderful or you experience something wonderful. It's like, ah, a relief, ah. Or something super cool. Ooh, look at that. Use those expressions to bring yourself back to this moment. Or if you're even feeling angst, it's okay. Angst is present. It's not who you are. It's just something you're experiencing. And it will shift and change because everything does. And so one other little technique that I'd like to leave for you today is this. It's humming. It's such a simple thing. Everyone does it. We often do it in our showers, or maybe when they're in the car and we're humming along to something or singing. But humming, just making that sound. And I'd like you to go ahead and take your thumbs. I know you have earbuds in your ears, but see if you just kind of hold your hands over your ears for just a moment. And I want you to hum and feel how that buzzes the cranium, how it really creates that little And that's something that you can do to bring yourself present to this moment, something that you can actually participate in. And no one even knows you're doing it. You know, you can just kind of do it quiet, go to the bathroom, hum a little tune, whatever. And then, and the point of it is humming calms and soothes the nervous system. And what's usually jacked up is that nervous system based on external stimuli that we bring into our brain that we believe is true, whether it is or not. And the point is to come back and just bring yourself, calm yourself, so you can take a really good look. How am I feeling? Why am I responding to this or reacting to this? And we can mindfully begin to explore things within ourselves. And you have the power to do that all the time. The breath is the other one. You're breathing all the time anyway. Pay attention to it. When it's short and rapid, there might be a little stress going on. But if you get yourself just to take those nice breaths. Remember, my mom used to say, count to 10. And it was very, very sound and sage advice. It was take that moment just to slow it down and take a good look at what's really going on within you, because you're the one that's co-creating this environment for yourself with the stimuli around you. So thank you for tuning in with me. I don't want to take all the time, so I'm hopping back in.
Thank you, Jody. That's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Let me ask you folks in the chat room, just type in how are you feeling right now? What's your reaction to that experience? Light, awesome, relaxed, release, calmer, aware. Yes, for healing. Yeah, yeah, peaceful, calm. Right. Daniel, you can get an hour long. Watch for Jody's next appearance.
Hey, and one other thing too, isn't it interesting how when it started, what was on your heart and on your mind, stress, term papers, et cetera, et cetera. And then for a moment, you were able to just kind of go into your own version of the reality you wanted, calmness. I mean, I don't think many people wake up and go, I want to be stressed out today. I think most people wake up and think, I'm hopeful for a really good day, and taking that inventory within ourselves is so important. So I'm really, really super happy that you're all feeling so good. And now that things are loosening up, I hope that I'll be able to share this practice with you in person someday. That would be delightful, and I would love
Yes.
that very much.
Yes, yes. Because it is true that our world is made up of vibration. Even light is vibration. Everything is vibration, right?
It is everything, everything. And, when you get to super string theory, which is really cool stuff, but of course, you need at least 10 paradigms of reality, which that's another story for another time. But in that particular theory, they talk about everything is moving in a wave, and sound is a wave. Sound is really nothing. It really is. It's nothing at all. Sound is just creating a movement through a medium, and we experience it. So it's, sound is something that happens now. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's now, it's the nowness, and that's mindfulness is nowness. Would be another good way to kind of look at that, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Jody. Let's so Jody has shown us that the sounds, the vibrations around us can affect our level of mindfulness, our personal level of mindfulness. Let me bring April and Elena back into the conversation now. What are some of the other things in our environment that affect our level of mindfulness?
I can start.
Yeah.
I was going, I think technology, something that I know is super disruptive, and even more so now during the pandemic, is technology. I'm sure many of you who watched, what was the documentary on Netflix? It wasn't The Social Method, The Social.
Oh yeah, the
Social
Social
dilemma.
That's
Social
it.
dilemma.
Thank you. My mind went mindless at that moment.
That happens. So don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, Doug, you're asking him to talk now? Oh, dear.
I hope that most of what was covered in that wasn't a surprise to you as communications students. But I think what was always illuminating for me to remember is that the executives of Facebook and Google aren't letting their children have devices right now. And one of the reasons why, and it just kind of parlays really nicely off of Jody's exercise, that sound has the ability to trigger an emotional response. How many have you heard the Outlook ding, or the ding from your notifications, or the ding from your Slack, or the ding, and you literally have a physical reaction? Well, if you're constantly getting dinged on all these different communication devices and being asked to constantly divert your attention to keep up with that communication need, you're going to constantly be feeling flight or fight. And so I would encourage you all to, no matter what profession you get into, go into your settings and turn off your notification sounds. It will change your life. I did that with all of my devices, including my laptop. The only notification I now get is the Outlook calendar reminder, because I don't want to forget a meeting. But I mean, truly, I also think just this technology has also sort of condensed the appropriate amount of time that can go by in a business setting where, you know, it's appropriate to respond. And I think that, you know, as humans, we read each other's behavior, and consistent behavior is a message that we send to others. And so if you're consistently emailing at 6 p.m. and then at 9 p.m. and then at 11 p.m. and then at 5 a.m., you're actually sending your colleagues the message that you are willing to receive those messages and you will respond. Conversely, you don't have to send an out of office reminder. If you just stop replying to the emails, you probably won't be emailed after 6, after 9. You know, I make it a point to tell others I have a family. I love being at the table with my family. I want to be present for them because I want them to grow up in a world where they have the ability to be present for others as well. And so, you know, I think earlier in my career, I really struggled with that. And after the birth of my first kid, it was even more so of a struggle. I will tell you now, find the practices of mindfulness now while you're a student and you're feeling the stress of finals and you're feeling the stress of an internship and you're feeling the stress of graduation. Find what works for you, whether it's meditation, whether it's a sound therapy, whether it's talk therapy, picking up the phone and going to a therapist, whether it's you know, tea at night to help you sleep, whether it's turning off your device after 8 p.m., whatever it is, do it now, because life only gets more stressful. You know, your job will only become more high stakes if you continue to work in sort of corporate America. I'm assuming, obviously, if you know, do something else like a marathon runner, or, you know, you're going to have a different high stakes field. But my point is, when you start grounding in your practices now, you're going to be set up for success. I didn't have those practices probably until the birth of my son. And I was in constant fight or flight. You know, my son would be crying because he was an infant. When I dropped him off at daycare, then I would leave and then I would go to the office and I would feel guilty. And then I would come home and I would miss dinner and I maybe got home in time to put him down. And it was a cycle. And I realized, like, I can't do this anymore. I have to start communicating my needs. I have to start figuring out what's triggering me. I have to start putting up healthy boundaries. And it wasn't just saying, hi, I'm Elena. I need to be home in time for my son. It was like, I also had to show up consistently too, and send the message that while I'm here, I'm here. While I'm at home, I'm at home. And I had to send that message, not just vocally to my supervisors. I actually had to do the work. I actually had to be at work and not be wondering what was happening with my son and texting his daycare provider and getting nervous, and then going home and texting every time, or writing back on my mobile device from the nursing chair every time my boss emailed me. I had to, and then, you know, eventually I left that position because I knew it wasn't healthy. And I had to do the introspective work. So my point is, I'm hoping that you take away sort of a personal learning experience of my own, knowing that, you know, one day you may want a family. Maybe one day you want to start your own business. Maybe one day you want to embark on a big move. Mindfulness now can only set you up for success in the future, to be able to navigate the crazy things that happen in this life. For me, it was the birth of my son. But for you, it could be a big job promotion. It could be a loved one who gets sick. It could be a global pandemic. And so I just leave you with, you know, Dr. Swanson, Jody, April, we're here today to give you some of the tools, but today isn't going to be a cure-all. Go do the work. Go find out what works for you and keep at it like you would going on a treadmill 3 times a week, or, you know, eating healthy foods. You got to keep your mind healthy too.
That's right. Because what goes into your mind is similar in a lot of ways to what goes into your stomach, to the extent that it creates what you become. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Elena. April, let's bring you back in.
Yeah, I was going to say if I can add on really quick. I think what Elena was speaking to is kind of something that was coming up for me as well, was really thinking about in my work with the community, right? Whether that's at schools or within the community that my students live in, right? I think a barrier sometimes to mindfulness or to that practice is exactly what Elena was describing, is that survival mode, right? Of being in that constant state of survival. Like, I don't have time to focus on myself right now because I have to take care of everybody else around me, right? And so I think that's something to think about and consider. And I think, Elena, what you said was so beautifully said. And thank you for sharing your experience, right? That, really stressing the importance of doing that internal work, right? That reflective work. So that way you're not operating in survival mode all the time, right? We can actually break that pattern once we start reflecting and checking in with ourselves. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and for trusting us with it. So thank you. But yeah, Dr. Swanson, do you want me to go ahead and share now? Yes. Okay, great.
Yes. Let me make sure I've got you set up so that you can share. Let's see here. Yeah, you should be able to share now.
Okay, awesome. So I heard so many things. I was like, I don't know if you saw me, I was like snapping in my camera just because I heard a lot. There's always, I do find this strong connection between mindfulness and the greater conversation of self-care, right? And I do think there is a connection between mindfulness practices and being a restorative person or a restorative practitioner, a restorative human being, right? And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit right now. And I heard some things that I will highlight here as well. So I have a little presentation here. So I'm going to share that really quickly. Give me 1 second while I queue it up. Alrighty, there we go. Okay, so I'll try to be quick here. So we have time for questions and things of that nature at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and skip slides a little bit because we did already do our opening and our check-in. So I just want to start really quickly with a definition, right, of what is restorative justice, right? This is my organization. I work for an organization called OC Human Relations. This is our definition of restorative justice. It's a definition we feel really proud of, one that we think centers all the really important elements of restorative justice. So it says restorative justice is a mindset and set of practices derived from indigenous practices that center relationships, heals harm, and actively dismantles systems of oppression. It is a healing justice that is rooted in community, love, and joy. I feel like that part is so important, that connection to healing, right? And I feel like mindfulness paves the way for that. If you're in tune with yourself, you're in tune with what's coming up for you, it can lead to greater healing, right? And it can help you provide space for other folks to engage in healing as well. Just really quick here. These are our practitioner anchors, is what we like to call them. Essentially like our core values, what we believe to be the core values of restorative justice. I'm going to read through them really quickly. So one, we are all interconnected. That we really strongly believe in that interconnectedness amongst all beings. We all have inherent value and dignity. We all need love, even when it's perceived that we are undeserving. We all have a deep-rooted sense of accountability to relationships we value. We all build meaningful connections when sharing joy and vulnerability. We all hold intersectional identities that impact our lived experiences and how we navigate society. And we all build knowledge and wisdom from our experiences, and everything we need to make positive change is already here. So this is kind of what we believe grounds the work, right? And grounds us as restorative practitioners, and that's not just in my role, right? I recognize that, I'm not in the field of communications, but I do think communication is a huge part of my job, right? And it's just a huge part of who I am as a restorative practitioner. So I will say these are anchors that ground us in being restorative practitioners in our lives, right? Whether that's in your relationships with folks at work, relationships in your personal life, right? That all of these things can kind of anchor you in that mindset of how do I approach conflict? How do I engage in a place of healing? So just wanted to center those really quick. And so really quick, I'm just going to talk about a couple of practices and then make that connection to mindfulness in just a moment, and how we are really trying to make it more apparent, right? That there is a connection between RJ, there is a connection between RJ and mindfulness and mindfulness practices. So the first practice that we do, like what I was talking about at the beginning, right, are called circles. We call them community building circles, connection circles. There's lots of different variations there, but really the intention is to cultivate community, right? So it's an intentional, structured way for us to be in community with one another. And so these are some images of circles that are at some of the school sites that I'm a part of. I want to also share though, right, my nonprofit, we do circles in all of our meetings. Like that is how we are intentional about being in space and sharing space with one another. So we do circles in my team meetings. We do circles in my all staff meetings. So it is a practice that we've adopted, not just at our school with young people, but also in my organization at our meetings. So in terms of thinking about different practices that can be applied in different settings, this is definitely one of them. And so why circles? Why are circles important? Just got a couple of notes here. Circles promote equity of voice, right? So when we're sitting in circle and we're sharing that very structured, intentional space, that every single person that is in the circle has the chance to speak, right? That all of the voices in that circle are important and valued, and their stories are valued. It also lends itself to shared power, that there's just not one person in this space that has all the power, but really we're creating shared knowledge and we're sharing the power as we go around the circle, and every person has an opportunity to speak and share their truth. Promote storytelling, like I'd mentioned, right? Depending on the questions that are asked, it really lends itself for people to really to honor their stories and bring their full truths to the space. It challenges bias, right? If we're sitting in circle with people from different identities and different walks of life, if you're intentional about building community and being connected with one another, right, it's going to shed the boxes that we put people in, because we're no longer seeing this person as the other, but instead we're seeing this person as interconnected with me, right? Like, I know this person, I'm in a relationship with this person, I have deep love and affection for this person. I start shedding some of my preconceived notions about who this person is and how they walk through the world. It sets a caring, supportive tone and sense of belonging. Like, I will say that when we started implementing this at my office and in my team, it really does, I really feel like I belong to that group, right? I think in any other workplace than I've been in, I've never felt so connected to the people at work than when I'm at my team meetings, right? Because we're always intentional, like I said, about checking in with ourselves, checking with each other. We've incorporated mindfulness practices in our openings and closings and circles. And so it's just unlike any other space I've been in. So it really does set that tone. SEL competencies are developed, right? And through circle, we're able to create and really experience empathy, right? And perspective taking and all of those things. It builds problem solving capacity. I've seen this again at work with adults and also with young people, that when we are connected to one another and we trust one another, and we're in real authentic relationship with each other, we are way more capable to have more eyes on a problem, right? And come to a solution because we're more vulnerable, right? I'm able to give that idea or make that suggestion because I don't think that other people are going to judge me for it, right? But I'm able to just be creative and fall into that. So it builds that capacity as well. So moving on, right? So that was circles, which is a really, really beautiful practice that I love, and I love being in circle. We also, another practice that we do that's a restorative practice is restorative communication. And it was already highlighted. So much of what I already heard was kind of signaling to this, to restorative communication. And so the first one, right, are restorative questions. And so this is kind of, I think Elena was saying this, talking about that importance of self-reflection, right? And so as a practice of being mindful, right, of like checking in with yourself and checking in with like, hey, how am I processing this situation, right? And so in particular, we use these questions when we're thinking about conflict, right? And so this really gets you to go internal, to go in yourself and say, hey, how am I processing what happened in this situation? What's coming up for me, right? What do I need to move forward? And so these questions are open-ended and they really lend themselves for that deeper reflection. So what happened? What were you thinking and feeling at the time? What have you thought about since? Who was impacted and how? And what needs to happen to make things as right as possible? So again, these are great questions to kind of do that internal work of figuring out, where am I at? What do I need? You know, how can I process this? And then we often then move from that facilitated reflection, right? And bring folks together to engage in dialogue if both people are ready and willing to do that work, and share their reflections with one another, which I'll talk about in just a moment. The second part, active listening, right? It's an intentional step to actively listen. So not only are we doing the work to listen to ourselves, right? And to do that internal work of processing, but it's also then when we're ready to engage with someone else and to hear the other perspective, right? How are we stepping into a place of active listening? How am I attending? How am I showing up with my body, right? How am I following, reflecting back what you said, right? So really listening intently, and listening with empathy. This was also mentioned earlier. How am I showing up with my heart to this conversation? How am I making sure that you feel seen, heard, and valued, right? And how do I also make sure that I'm not, if it's not a situation that calls for my advice, how can I just be there? And how can I just be a place for someone to speak to, right? And how can I just be a listening ear? And so again, listening with empathy, listening with the heart, such an important piece to restorative communication. And then lastly, iMessages. I think Elena was bringing this up as well. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. But really, right, if you're in a conflict or something is coming up for you, in the example of you know, setting boundaries with work, right? An iMessage is huge here. You can definitely use one where you're focused on the feelings caused by unmet needs, right? You're going into yourself again and you're thinking, what feelings are coming up for me and like why, right? Because somebody maybe did something, but their actions aren't what's causing me to feel this. So what are my underlying unmet needs here? How can I explore those, identify those, and then share those, right? And so you focus on the feelings, identifying those feelings too. Like that is something I think that we all can grow in, right? Is actually identifying what feelings are coming up for us beyond anger and sadness, right? But like maybe I'm feeling disappointed. How can we actually pinpoint what those feelings are? And then again, go deep and find the root, like what's not being met here, and how can I communicate that to the person that I'm in relationship with? So doing that through an iMessage. iMessages are also respectful in tone and intent. So I heard this as well earlier, which was so awesome, that it's really important, right? If we're in conflict with someone, it's centering the relationship, right? Especially if it's someone we work with, someone that we are in relationship with in a personal relationship, whether familial or not, right? That the core should be, or you know, we would hope, right, would be to keep that relationship centered. So when we're delivering this iMessage, it's focusing on our feelings and what our unmet needs are that we've identified, right? And how can we share that with the person we're in relationship with in a way that's respectful and in tone and intent, because we want them to hear us, right? We want to be heard by them, and to move forward. And then lastly, it can be utilized in all relationships, right? So it's not just, again, not just with students in my capacity, right? But also with my colleagues, also with my family members, with my partner, right? And so really practicing using this as a communication tool for sure. And again, really bringing that mindfulness piece of like, how am I checking in with myself and doing that exploratory work of figuring out what I'm feeling and what my needs are. Okay, and then lastly here, just making further connections to mindfulness and restorative practices. Got a few more things to mention. So in circle practice, right, like I mentioned, what we've been really trying to do with our work in restorative practices in schools, right, is incorporating mindfulness in circles. And so in every circle, there's always an opening, a check-in, and then, like I said, a checkout and a closing at the end. And so we've been trying to do is incorporate either mindfulness exercises, visualizations, right? Yoga, anything like that, to get us to start us off in circle or to close us out, right? To signal, hey, we're entering into a new space and we're going to do something different. And so let's be present, right? Let's move everything to the side and just be here together. Because there's so many other ways we can open and close the circle, which are also great, right? Like with quotes and with games and things like that. what we've been really trying to be intentional about, also including mindfulness practices, because we see the value in them. Warrior healer. This is a really important piece. Fania Davis is an amazing advocate for restorative justice. She's done so much work. She's written this book called The Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice. And I highly recommend it. It's a pretty short book and it's really, really powerful. But she talks about this idea of restorative justice practitioners being warrior healers. And when I first read that, I was like, wow, that's really powerful, because it gets for me, it gets to the root of what restorative justice is that it's the work to do the inner work to heal yourself and to provide space to heal others. And it's also to do the work to change and challenge systems that cause harm, right? And so what she says is, challenge yourself to be a healer and activist for justice. Don't feel you have to choose one or the other, be both. See activism as a form of social healing and interpersonal healing as a form of social justice. Transform and heal yourself as you transform and heal the world. So I just wanted to share that, and that notion of this warrior healer. And when we're trying to step into that role of being more restorative people, right? That again, we're occupying both of those spaces, warrior and healer, and the need to do the healing for yourself. That moves me into the next part of radical self-care. That's something we talk a lot about. We're talking a lot about as a team, the importance to take care of ourselves, to practice self-care, practice setting boundaries, right? And we do it beyond the surface level stuff, right? Those things are important too. Like, I think Elena had mentioned this as well, right? Like doing meditation and yoga and all those things are so important, right? And how do we see the bigger reason or the bigger why, right? That we're not just doing it because it makes us feel good in the moment. That's important, of course. But what's the bigger why for why we engage in those practices, right? And it's to continue doing this heart work. So we like to say it's a necessity to take care of ourselves and one another to continue creating change in and with our communities. So super important to be intentional about practicing self-care, right? Checking in with yourself and doing the work needed to move into healing and all of that. So you stay in it for the long run. And then lastly, moving into navigating harm and conflict, right? So that we are, thinking about what I want to say actually about this with regards to mindfulness is when we are navigating harm and conflict, oftentimes what I like to do with the young people that I work with is I have a bunch of, I call them self-care tools. So if we're about to get into a dialogue, right? So maybe it's someone that caused harm and the person that was harmed, right? And they've both reflected on those questions, did some of that internal work and that internal processing. And now they've agreed, hey, I want to make this right. I want to move forward with this person and make things as right as possible. So they've agreed, they're sitting at the table and they're ready to have this restorative dialogue, which could also be known as a conflict mediation, right? And so they're sitting here ready to do the work. And what I'll often do is provide them some self-care tools. And they're always in the center of the table. And I say, hey, you know what? If you feel like you need this, or you would like to use one of these tools to just help you be present in this conversation, I invite you to do that, right? And so what I feel like is happening, right, is it's teaching our young people to, again, go into themselves, to practice mindfulness in that they're checking in with themselves and their body and saying, hey, this conversation is hard for me. I might need something that's going to make me stay present. I want to be present for this conversation. How can I do that, right? And so I have essential oils. I have different tactile things like putty, aroma, I think it's aromatherapy putty, right? And some other stuff. But without fail, and in every conversation, they don't want to grab anything at first. And then you see someone grab it, then the other person does, right? So I think it's, again, teaching young folks to identify what's coming up for them, to be self-reflective, and then to identify what's coming up for them in their bodies, and like, how can they stay present with that intention, again, to stay present in the conversation that they've agreed to participate in. So just want to put that there. And I think that's what I have for right now, because the rest, yes, is the checkout and the closing. So thank you, Dr. Swanson. I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you.
Thank you, April. We're going to let you come back in a few minutes and do the checkout. What I think we should do now is ask our students and others who are with us this afternoon, what questions do you have? What can we do to help you? You can either put a hand up, or you can type it in chat, whatever you'd like to do. while we're waiting for that, I'm going to put in chat the name of the book from our 466T class. This is the book we've been using for our text. It's called Fearless at Work by Michael Carroll. It's a really good book about how to approach the experience of work, as he says, with confidence, resilience, and creativity. So what questions do you folks have that we can help you with? Do we have any hands up here? I'm looking to see. Oh, Chelsea, Dr. Reynolds, come with the question.
Hi. I am the instructor for Comm 310, which is my mass media ethics class right now. And I'm wondering how mindfulness practices can improve our ethical decision making. How do ethical mindfulness practices make us better communicators? And nodding, so maybe Elena, you can handle that.
I love this question. I also would love to hear April weigh in because I'm sure she has a good sort of pairing. But yeah, once you start to move up in your career as a communications counselor, you will no doubt be in situations where you're going to be, your ethics are going to be challenged. You're going to have your own personal ethos, and somebody else on the other side of the table, likely an executive, maybe the president of your organization, maybe an attorney, maybe an outside counsel, and they're not going to always have the same ethos or the same mindset that you will. Mindfulness comes in so key because it's almost as if you have to restorative communicate, as April was sort of talking about, because you're going to rumble. I don't know if anyone here reads Brene Brown, and she talks about the rumble. You're going to rumble. It's meant to. It's an ethical dilemma. And in ethical dilemmas, everything is gray, everything is a possibility, and you're sort of unpacking all of the different scenarios that could come, and you're sort of weighing, probable outcomes. If you don't within yourself have a strong ethos, have the strong practice of setting healthy boundaries, of doing the introspective work of saying, whoa, did I make the right call? How did I make people feel? And you kind of take that in as feedback and data and journal about it, or do a rumble with your colleagues. Sometimes that's also called a postmortem once you're in corporate America. If you don't do that regularly, you're not going to be able to build the trust with your counsel. So I would say, your question, how does this come into play? How does mindfulness come into play? I think this year for myself, I can speak to myself, and then I'll let the other panelists sort of take it, is I've really had to kind of like look outside myself, especially when, things for the Black Lives Matter, social justice movements come up. As me and my organization were planning for some folks to go back into work, the trauma that our own staff has experienced through the loss of loved ones because of this pandemic, and then asking them to go back to work, and like, when would that be appropriate? Just for the record, we work at school sites, and we're sort of beholden to the contracts set forth by our school districts. So we're asking folks to go to school sites, much like any other teacher. And actually, most of the time, they're there when the teacher unions haven't negotiated teachers there. So how do you create communications that acknowledge the danger that some of our staff might, endure and feel, and being really mindful of that? I'm really lucky to work for an organization today, Think Together, that we practice a lot of the same things that April was talking about. When we have these, we call them strategic leadership group meetings, we open with a meditation. And, meditation will vary. I think I saw that in the chat. It's not, you're going to find what works for you. But my point is, a lot of times that meditation is just like, okay, for 10 seconds, we're going to be quiet. We're going to take the time to turn off all our devices. We're going to turn our cameras on. We're going to be present for this moment. We're going to find good lighting. It doesn't have to be like professional lighting, but just good lighting so that we can see each other's face and be present in the moment. Because we are going to have to rumble, and we know that. And then we're going to check in and we're going to check out. And just like we're about to do here, we do that in our own work. You know, before a meeting ends, we go over action items and then we go, how does everyone feel? You know, and I think in other organizations I worked for, we didn't do that. It becomes like, once you start doing that for the most mundane meetings, those really tough meetings when you're tackling the ethics and the challenges of day-to-day crises. I mean, I've dealt with more crises this year. I dealt with probably a major crisis once a month this year, and that's probably more than I did my entire almost 15 years in communications. But it becomes so integral to the work, to making sure that all of our audiences are being taken into consideration when we're creating the communications for them, that we're not unintentionally othering an audience. We're not unintentionally discouraging others from speaking up. I want to end on this. April mentioned something about trust and building trust and the reason for their circles. I think that's brilliant. We don't do the circles. We're still kind of doing Zooms. And even before then, it was very board meeting style. But when you're feeling attacked all the time, your stress response is going to be high and you're not going to be able to build trust. And it's going to be really difficult to repair that. So coming into my organization now, right off the bat, I was so grateful to have executives who understood that and wanted to build trust with me. If you are working in an organization where your executives are very cold and kind of already sort of othering, it will be difficult for you to establish trust. If you do, kudos to you. But I say that now as sort of like a precursor to one of the reasons I got my APR was because when you have an accreditation in public relations, you go deep into the ethics work and what it means to be an ethical practitioner in communications. But it doesn't do enough to talk about the restorative communication that we're talking about today, right? It talks about the rules. It doesn't talk about how to apply the rules. So this is that work. And you can't do it without a trust there. And yeah, I would highly encourage you, Brene Brown, if you haven't already. That was a brilliant question because yeah, I think we as communicators have been dealing with that more this year than in any other period of most of our careers, even the seasoned ones.
So true. Thank you so much, Elena.
Well, we're getting to the point where we need to start wrapping it up. So before we go back to April to close the circle for us today, I want to thank all of my panel members. It's been wonderful. We had a great conversation. People are going to think we rehearsed this because it all fits so well together. We did. We spent hours rehearsing this. and I'd like to thank those of you who joined us, students and others, for your presence and your questions. And there's so many resources out there for you to find on the internet, in the bookstore, on YouTube. They're everywhere. And as soon as you start looking, you'll find this cool stuff. And don't feel like, oh, I have to be mindful, so I have to find the right answer. There is no the right answer. There's what works for you and what makes you feel better and what makes you more calm in your life and in your career at work. Find what fits for you. So, Jody, 60 seconds. Any last words from you?
Very, very, very briefly. I always like to think about this. I want to see through my heart. I want to feel through my heart. I want to hear through my heart. I want to touch through my heart. And I think April, you touched on that. I loved your slide presentation. Elena, I thought it wonderful. Doug, everyone, great questions. Opening our heart is one of the best things you'll ever do as a human in your lifetime. And that's my advice for you is open your heart as wide as possible and live. So thanks
How
for
would
letting me be here.
how would the news be different today if everyone was living by that rule? Wow. Hmm.
Be a whole different
Oh,
news cycle.
it sure would. It sure would. Thank you, Jody. Elena, 60 seconds. Any last words from you?
No, I feel like I took all my 60 seconds. I'll hand it off.
Thank you. Okay, April, we're going to let you close us out literally by closing the circle.
All right, awesome. Thank you all so much. All righty, so I'm going to ask us to go ahead and do a checkout. Super excited to hear that other folks are using check-ins and checkouts in their meetings. It really does lend itself to just a different feeling, a different way of being in those spaces, right? It feels less cold. So I highly encourage you to try that on as well. So check out and chat. Go ahead and share one word to describe how you're feeling at the end of our time together and one takeaway or intention that you have from today's session. So a takeaway, maybe an intention that you have that you want to set forth for the rest of the academic year. Go ahead and put that in. We've got lots of feelings coming in. Awesome. Happy, refreshed, lifted, comforted, relieved, relaxed, renewed. Awesome. Happy, fresh, relaxed, encouraged, beautiful, inspired, hopeful, peaceful, enthused, at peace, encouraged. I love it. Be present, inspired. Awesome. Awesome, folks. Thank you so much. Keep those coming through and invite you to read them. Interested in sound baths? Yes, me too. I definitely want to look into that more as well. Love seeing the trajectory for a healthier society. Awesome. So I invite you to go ahead and read what's coming through the chat. And I do have a closing for us. So I'm going to read it really quickly. Let me go ahead and stop there. So it's a visualization. So if you're interested in learning more about circles, this is a resource that my team uses a lot. It's called Circle Forward. Oh, you can't see it because of my background. Oh no. Well, it's called Circle Forward. It's written by Kate Prentice, she's really big in the restorative justice world. Kate Prentice, and it's great. It has circle plans, it has quotes, it has meditations, visualizations. So going to use that resource and lead us through a really short visualization today, okay? So this one is called Family Connections Visualization. So again, I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. If you want to turn off your camera, you can. It's a pretty short one though to close us out on our time together today. So I invite you all to take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Continue to breathe deeply and slowly as I speak. Close your eyes if that is comfortable for you. Imagine around us a circle of your ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and so on, who care deeply about you. Imagine them looking at us with love and pride. They surround us. Hold a circle of protection and love. Feel their support and their complete acceptance of you as you are. See the light in their eyes as they look at you with unconditional love. Bring your attention back to your breath. Breathe deeply and slowly 3 more times. Now, when you're ready, return your awareness back to your environment and our space together, bringing with you the love given by your ancestors. Breathe deeply, knowing that they can see the core goodness in you. And that's it. Just want to send you off with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was so nice. What a nice way to end.
And there's the survey link in the chat, folks. Feel free to respond and give feedback about Comm Week 2021. I know the class would appreciate that. So have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you for joining us today. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Elena.
Oh, I didn't realize it was still on.
Yeah.
Bye. See you later. Thank you all so much. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.